The iron gates swung open with a mechanical hum, and Lily Edwards felt her stomach flip as she drove her beaten-up truck past them. The contrast between her vehicle and the pristine estate almost comical. She had designed gardens for wealthy clients before, but nothing had prepared her for the sprawling mansion that came into view, all glass and stone and modern angles that somehow managed to look cold despite the California sunshine beating down on it. A man stood at the top of the front steps, hands in the pockets of what she was certain were designer slacks, his white dress shirt rolled up to his elbows. Even from a distance, she could tell he was younger than she had expected. Most of her clients were older couples looking to revamp their outdoor spaces before retirement. This man looked like he was in his early 30s, maybe 34 or 35 at most, with dark hair, and a stance that radiated the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. Lily parked her truck and grabbed her portfolio, suddenly very aware of the grass stain on her jeans and the fact that her ponytail was probably a mess from the drive. She had debated changing into something more professional, but she had learned early in her career that clients hiring a landscape designer expected someone who looked like they actually worked with their hands. Miss Edwards. The man descended the steps with easy grace, extending a hand. Lucas Mitchell. His grip was firm, his palm warm against hers. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a striking gray-blue, the kind that seemed to shift color depending on the light. He was handsome in an almost intimidating way, all sharp jawline and broad shoulders, but there was something in his expression that seemed tired, maybe even lonely. "Mr. Mitchell, thank you for having me." She released his hand and gestured back toward the estate. "Your property is stunning." "It is." He turned to look at the mansion, and something flickered across his face that she could not quite read. "But it does not feel like much of anything, if I am being honest. I have been living here for 2 years, and it still feels like a hotel." Lily nodded slowly, understanding dawning. She had worked with clients like this before, people who had all the money in the world but could not quite figure out how to make a space feel lived in. "That is why I am here. Let me show you what I am thinking." They walked the grounds together, and Lucas explained what he wanted, though his descriptions were vague. He wanted color life, something that made him want to come home at the end of the day. His business consumed most of his time, he told her. He ran a pharmaceutical company that his father had founded, and while the work was important, it was also relentless. Lily listened more than she spoke, taking notes and studying the land. The estate had good bones, plenty of natural light and beautiful views of the hills beyond, but the landscaping was minimal and sterile. Perfectly trimmed hedges, a few ornamental trees, and a lawn that looked like it had never seen a single leaf out of place. It was the kind of landscaping that screamed money but whispered nothing about the person who lived there. "I think I can help you," she said finally, turning to face him. "But I need to know more about you. What do you love? What makes you happy?" Lucas blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "I do not understand. A garden should reflect the person who lives there. It should be an extension of your home, not just decoration." She softened her tone, realizing she might have come across too strong. "Tell me about yourself, hobbies, favorite places, memories you want to recreate." He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the manicured lawn. "I used to spend summers at my grandmother's house when I was a kid. She had this wild garden, not organized or fancy, just full of everything. Roses, lavender, vegetables growing next to flowers. It smelled incredible, and there were always bees and butterflies everywhere." Lily felt a smile tug at her lips. "That sounds perfect." Over the next hour, they discussed possibilities. Lucas wanted a space that felt alive, that changed with the seasons, that attracted wildlife. He wanted to be able to sit outside and feel like he was somewhere other than a sterile estate. Lily suggested a tiered garden with native plants, a vegetable patch, a small orchard, and a water feature that would bring movement and sound to the space. By the time she left, she had a contract signed and a timeline agreed upon. 6 months to transform his empty estate into something that felt like home. The work began the following week. Lily arrived early each morning with her small crew, and Lucas was often already awake, drinking coffee on the back terrace and watching them work. He never interfered, but she could feel his gaze on her as she directed the placement of boulders for the water feature or argued with her crew about the best location for the fruit trees. 3 weeks into the project, Lucas appeared at her side while she was kneeling in the dirt, hands covered in soil as she planted lavender along a newly constructed stone path. "Can I help?" She looked up, startled. "You want to help plant? I am tired of just watching." He crouched down beside her, and she noticed he had changed out of his usual work clothes into jeans and a plain t-shirt. "Show me what to do." Lily handed him a trowel and a lavender plant, demonstrating the proper depth and spacing. Lucas followed her instructions carefully, his movements precise and methodical. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the birds chirping in the nearby trees and the distant hum of her crew working on the irrigation system. "You are good at this," he said finally, sitting back on his heels and wiping sweat from his forehead. "I should hope so. I have been doing it for 8 years. "How did you get into landscape design?" Lily sat back too, stretching her legs out in front of her. "I studied environmental science in college, but I realized pretty quickly that I did not want to work in a lab or an office. I wanted to be outside, working with my hands, creating things. Landscape design felt like the perfect combination of art and science. Do you love it? Every day?" She met his eyes, struck by the intensity of his gaze. "Even the hard days, I cannot imagine doing anything else." Lucas nodded slowly. "I envy that. I inherited my company, and while I am good at running it, I am not sure it is what I would have chosen if I had the freedom to choose." "What would you have chosen?" He laughed, a quiet, self-deprecating sound. "I have no idea, that is the problem." Something in his admission made her chest ache. She understood being lost, even when everything on the outside looked perfect. "Maybe this garden will help you figure it out." From that day on, Lucas joined her whenever his schedule allowed. He learned the names of plants, how to properly prune roses, the difference between perennials and annuals. He was a quick study, asking thoughtful questions and genuinely interested in understanding not just what to do, but why. Lily found herself looking forward to the days when he worked alongside her. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, and beneath the serious exterior, there was a warmth that made her feel unexpectedly comfortable. They talked about everything and nothing while they worked, their conversations ranging from favorite books to childhood memories to their thoughts on whether pineapple belonged on pizza. 2 months into the project, the estate was already transforming. The water feature was complete, a naturalistic stream that flowed over rocks and pooled into a small pond surrounded by irises and water lilies. The vegetable garden was planted and thriving, neat rows of tomatoes, peppers, and squash already showing promising growth. The orchard was in place, young fruit trees that would not bear fruit for a few years but already added structure and promise to the landscape. Lily was standing by the pond, clipboard in hand as she reviewed the plan for the next phase, when Lucas appeared with 2 glasses of iced tea. "Thought you might be thirsty." She accepted the glass gratefully, taking a long drink. It was unseasonably hot for May, and she had been working since sunrise. "Thank you, you did not have to do that. I know." He stood beside her, looking out at the pond. "It is beautiful, Lily." "Better than I imagined." The sound of her first name in his voice did something strange to her pulse. They had been on a first-name basis for weeks now, but it still sent a little thrill through her every time he said it. She told herself it was unprofessional to be attracted to a client, that nothing could come of it even if she wanted it to, but her heart did not seem to care about professional boundaries. "The best is still to come," she said, forcing herself to focus on the work. "Wait until the wildflower meadow blooms." "I can hardly wait." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. I want you to know how much this means to me, this whole project. You are not just designing a garden, you are giving me something I did not even know I needed." Lily felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. "That is exactly what I hope to do." They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with something unspoken, and then Lucas's phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled it from his pocket with an apologetic grimace. "I have to take this board meeting." "Of course. Go." He hesitated, then reached out and touched her arm briefly before walking back toward the house. The touch was fleeting, barely there, but Lily felt it long after he was gone. The following week, disaster struck. A massive heat wave rolled through California, temperatures soaring into the triple digits. Despite Lily's best efforts and the new irrigation system, several of the newly planted trees began to show signs of stress. She spent long hours hand-watering and applying mulch, desperate to save the plants that represented months of work. Lucas found her at 10 o'clock at night, still watering by the light of the garden's new path lights. He did not say anything, just grabbed a hose and started helping. They worked together until past midnight, soaking the soil around every vulnerable plant. When they finally finished, they collapsed on the grass near the pond, both exhausted and covered in dirt. "Thank you," Lily said quietly, staring up at the stars. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." His voice was firm. "This garden is not just yours anymore, it is ours." Something in those words made her throat tight with emotion. She turned her head to look at him and found him already watching her. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility, and she thought he might lean closer, might close the distance that had been shrinking between them for weeks. But then her phone alarm went off, reminding her to water again in 6 hours, and the moment broke. "I should go," she said, sitting up reluctantly. "Early start tomorrow, Lily." Lucas sat up too, and when she looked at him, his expression was conflicted. "I need to tell you something," her heart hammered in her chest. "Okay. I have really enjoyed these past few months. Getting to know you, working on this project together, you have become important to me." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had learned meant he was nervous. "But I do not want to put you in an awkward position. You are working for me, and I do not want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable." "I do not feel pressured," she said softly, "and I have enjoyed it too, more than I should probably admit." Relief flooded his face. "Then would you have dinner with me, not here, not as client and designer? Just as two people who want to spend time together?" Lily knew she should say no. She had 3 months left on the contract, and getting involved with a client was risky on every level. But when she looked at Lucas, at the hope and vulnerability in his eyes, she could not bring herself to refuse. "I would like that." Their first official date was the following Saturday. Lucas picked her up at her small apartment in town, looking unfairly handsome in dark jeans and a blazer. He had made reservations at her restaurant in the hills, a place with a view of the valley and food that Lily knew she would never have been able to afford on her own. But despite the fancy setting, the conversation was easy and natural, flowing like it always did when they worked together. They talked about Lucas's company, the stress of managing hundreds of employees and making decisions that affected people's livelihoods. They talked about Lily's dreams of someday opening her own nursery, a place where she could grow plants and teach others about sustainable gardening. "You should do it," Lucas said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You would be amazing at it, maybe someday." She laced her fingers through his, marveling at how right it felt. "When I have saved enough money. If you need an investor, let me know." She squeezed his hand gently. "I appreciate that, but I want to do it on my own, no shortcuts." "I respect that." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger and happier than she had ever seen him. "But the offer stands." They dated through the rest of the project, stealing moments together whenever they could. Lucas would pack lunch and they would eat together in the garden, sitting on the grass and watching the butterflies that had begun to flock to the newly planted flowers. They went to farmers' markets on weekends, Lily helping him pick out vegetables and herbs while he carried her bags and looked at her like she was the most fascinating person he had ever met. Lily fell for him gradually, then all at once. She fell for the way he listened when she talked, really listened, asking follow-up questions and remembering details. She fell for his unexpected gentleness with the plants, the way he handled seedlings like they were precious. She fell for the moments when his guard came down and he let her see the lonely man beneath the successful businessman. The garden continued to flourish under their combined care. The wildflower meadow Lily had planted began to bloom, a riot of orange poppies, purple lupines, and golden California sunflowers that swayed in the breeze. The vegetable garden produced its first harvest, and Lucas insisted on cooking dinner for her using tomatoes and basil they had grown together. One evening in August, as they sat on the new patio Lily had designed, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Lucas turned to her with an expression that made her pulse race. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and perfect. Lily felt tears prick at her eyes, happiness swelling in her chest until she thought she might burst with it. "I love you too." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Lily thought that maybe she had not just been designing a garden all these months. Maybe she had been building a home for both of them. The project officially concluded in late September, 6 months after Lily had first driven through those iron gates. The estate had been completely transformed. Where there had once been sterile lawn and rigid hedges, there was now a living, breathing ecosystem. The tiered gardens overflowed with color and life, bees buzzing among the flowers and birds nesting in the new trees. The orchard stood proud, young fruit trees already showing signs of next year's harvest. The vegetable garden had produced bushels of food that Lucas had started donating to local food banks, something Lily had suggested, and he had embraced enthusiastically. But more than the physical transformation, there was an intangible change to the estate. It felt warm now, lived in, loved. It felt like home. On the last official day of the project, Lily's crew packed up their equipment and drove away, leaving her alone with Lucas in the garden they had created together. "I do not want this to end," he said, pulling her close. "It does not have to." She looked up at him, her heart full. "The garden will need maintenance, ongoing care. I could come back regularly, make sure everything stays healthy." "I was not talking about the garden." His arms tightened around her waist. "Move in with me." Lily pulled back slightly, startled. "Lucas, we have only been dating for 4 months." "I know it is fast." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. "But I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Lily. This house, this estate, it finally feels like home, but not because of the garden, because of you. I do not want to spend another night here without you." She wanted to say yes immediately, but practical concerns crowded her mind. "What about my apartment, my things, my business?" "Bring all of it. Set up an office here. Use the greenhouse for your nursery dream." "I have more space than I know what to do with." His eyes searched hers, vulnerable and hopeful. "I am not trying to take over your life or your independence. I just want to share mine with you." Lily thought about her cramped apartment, the way she had been scraping by financially for years, pouring everything back into her business. She thought about the greenhouse at the estate that currently sat empty, the way Lucas had mentioned offhandedly that she could use it if she wanted. She thought about waking up next to him every morning, spending evenings in the garden they had built together, building a life as intentionally and carefully as they had built this landscape. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes." The joy that lit Lucas's face was brighter than any sunrise. He kissed her deeply, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around until they were both laughing and dizzy. Moving in together was chaotic and wonderful. Lily brought her worn furniture and her collection of gardening books, her dried flowers and her boxes of seeds. Lucas cleared out half his closet and insisted she take over the second bedroom as an office. They rearranged furniture together, arguing playfully about where things should go and compromising until they both felt satisfied, Within weeks, the estate truly felt like their home, not just his. Lily's boots sat by the back door next to his dress shoes. Her beat-up truck was parked next to his sleek sedan. The kitchen counter held her collection of gardening magazines and his business journals side by side. Lucas became more present at home, delegating more at work so he could spend evenings with Lily in the garden. They established routines, cooking dinner together and eating outside whenever weather permitted, walking the paths they had created while the sun set. On weekends, they worked on expanding the garden, Lily teaching Lucas new techniques while he provided the muscle for heavy lifting. The estate came alive in ways neither of them had anticipated. Lucas started hosting small gatherings, inviting colleagues and friends to see the gardens. Lily was amazed to watch him relax and laugh with people, the stress that usually lined his face melting away in the space they had created. He told her later that he had never entertained before because the house had felt too impersonal, but now he was proud to show people his home. Lily launched her nursery that winter, using the greenhouse to propagate native plants and teaching monthly workshops on sustainable gardening. Lucas helped her set up the business, insisting on being her first investor despite her protests. They compromised by making it a proper business loan with interest, something that made Lily feel better about accepting his help. The nursery was a success from the start. People loved Lily's teaching style and her obvious passion for plants. She found herself fully booked for months, her greenhouse overflowing with seedlings and her weekends filled with students eager to learn. One evening in early spring, almost a year after they had met, Lily was in the greenhouse transplanting seedlings when Lucas appeared in the doorway. She looked up and caught her breath at the expression on his face, a mixture of nervousness and determination that she had only seen once before, the night he had asked her to move in. "Hey," she said, setting down her trowel and wiping her hands on her jeans. "I thought you were working late." "I was, but I left early." He stepped inside and she noticed he was holding something behind his back. "I need to show you something." "Okay." She followed him out of the greenhouse and through the garden, confused when he led her to the pond. The sun was setting, painting everything in golden light, and the water reflected the colors like a mirror. Lucas stopped at the edge of the pond, where a new stone bench sat that Lily had not noticed before. It was simple but beautiful, carved from gray granite with their initials engraved on the backrest. "When did you do this?" she asked, running her fingers over the cool stone. "Yesterday, while you were teaching." He took her hand and she felt it trembling slightly. "Lily, this past year has been the best of my life. You did not just make this estate feel like home. You made me feel like I finally found where I belong." He sank down on one knee, and Lily's free hand flew to her mouth as tears sprang to her eyes. "I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you, gardens and businesses and a family and whatever else we can dream up." He pulled out a ring, a simple band with a deep green emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. "Will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out choked with emotion, and she was nodding frantically even as happy tears streamed down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Lucas slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her with a passion that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying, foreheads pressed together as the last rays of sunlight faded into dusk. They were married that summer in the garden, surrounded by friends and family and the flowers that Lily had planted. It was a small ceremony, intimate and personal, exactly what they both wanted. Lily wore a simple white dress and carried a bouquet of lavender from their garden, while Lucas looked impossibly handsome in a gray suit that matched his eyes. When they exchanged vows, Lily promised to continue growing things with him, both in the soil and in their hearts. Lucas promised to be her partner in everything, to support her dreams and build new ones together. There was not a dry eye in the garden by the time they kissed as husband and wife. The years that followed were full and rich. Lily's nursery expanded, and she hired staff to help manage the growing demand. Lucas gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company, promoting capable people he trusted and giving himself more time at home. They traveled during the slow season for the nursery, visiting famous gardens around the world and bringing back ideas and plants to incorporate into their own landscape. 2 years after their wedding, Lily found out she was pregnant. Lucas was overjoyed, immediately starting plans to convert one of the spare bedrooms into a nursery and researching child-safe plants for the garden. Lily teased him about being overly prepared, but she loved watching him throw himself into preparing for their child with the same intensity he brought to everything he cared about. Their daughter was born in early spring, a perfect, healthy baby girl they named Larkin Rose, with Lucas's gray eyes and Lily's brown hair. Lucas proved to be a devoted father, taking paternity leave and spending hours simply watching their daughter sleep, wonder written all across his face. As Larkin grew, the estate continued to evolve with their family. Lily designed a children's garden full of touchable plants and safe spaces to explore. Lucas built a treehouse in the old oak at the edge of the property, spending weekends hammering and sawing while Larkin watched from her playpen. They had a son 2 years later, Logan James, who had Lily's adventurous spirit and Lucas's methodical nature. The house filled with noise and laughter, toys scattered among the gardening tools, tiny boots lined up next to their adult ones by the back door. Lily would sometimes pause in her work, hands in the soil and children playing nearby, and marvel at how much her life had changed. She thought back to that first day driving through the iron gates, nervous and uncertain, having no idea that she was not just starting a job but beginning the rest of her life. Lucas would find her in those moments, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder, and she would lean back into his solid warmth, grateful beyond words. The estate that had once been empty and sterile was now bursting with life. Flowers bloomed in every season, vegetables ripened in neat rows, fruit trees dropped their bounty each fall. Children's laughter echoed through the paths, and love grew as steadily as the perennials that came back year after year, deeper and stronger with time. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas surprised Lily with a new garden, a secret project he had been working on with the help of her nursery staff. It was a rose garden, dozens of varieties in every color, with a fountain in the center and benches tucked into intimate corners. "It is perfect," Lily breathed, walking slowly through the space and inhaling the heady perfume of the blooms. "Not perfect yet." Lucas took her hand and led her to the fountain where a bronze plaque had been installed. It read, "For Lily, who made every empty space bloom with love." She turned to him with tears in her eyes, and he kissed her softly, the way he still did every single day, like she was the most precious thing in his world. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you more." Their children came running then, demanding to see the new garden, and Lucas scooped them up, one in each arm, while Lily explained the different types of roses. They walked together through the blooms, a family built on love and patience and the kind of care that made beautiful things grow. That night, after the children were asleep and the stars were bright overhead, Lily and Lucas sat on the bench by the pond, the same spot where he had proposed all those years ago. The estate spread out around them, a living testament to what they had built together. "Do you remember what you said that first day?" Lucas asked, his arm around her shoulders. "About the garden needing to reflect the person who lives there." "I remember. I did not realize then that you were not just talking about plants." He turned to look at her, his eyes full of the love that had never wavered, only grown stronger. "You helped me figure out who I really am, what matters, what home means. This estate feels alive because you filled it with life. You filled me with life." Lily rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the underlying scent that was just Lucas, familiar and beloved. "We did it together. We did it together," he agreed, pressing a kiss to her hair. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle splash of the fountain and the distant sound of an owl calling to its mate. The garden around them slept, but it was only resting, storing energy for tomorrow's growth, tomorrow's blooms, tomorrow's life. Just like them, Lily thought. Still growing, still blooming, still building something beautiful together, one day at a time. And in the morning, they would wake up and do it all again, tending to their garden and their family and their love with the same devotion that had transformed an empty estate into a true home, full of warmth and laughter and the kind of happiness that came from planting roots deep and watching them flourish. This was what forever looked like, Lily realized. Not a destination, but a journey, walked hand in hand through gardens of their own making, surrounded by the life they had cultivated with patience, dedication, and an endless, enduring love that would bloom anew with every season, year after beautiful year.